The course of events of today's manhwa begins in the laboratory. The recording of experiment number 683 begins. A couple of moments later, we see our main character, who is a pretty cool scientist. This time, all the recipes are optimized to the maximum. Even though Mowuji experienced too many failures, he managed to develop a liquid to open the meridians, which is enough to change the world. After several procedures, our main character happily lifts the bottle of liquid and rejoices because he was finally lucky and everything worked out for him. Mowuji understood that this liquid could allow humanity to evolve. The girl was surprised when she heard this. This girl was close to our main character. They conducted experiments together. She couldn't believe that the guy finally succeeded. This is a real miracle. At that moment, this guy felt something 100 times better than taking first place in Fortnite, because these two did not give up all these 10 years, and they achieved success. Realizing that all these annoying experiments are ending, the girl rushes into the guy's arms. 10 years later, he will finally be able to spend all his time on the wedding. The guy tells the girl that she has been with him for 10 years, and he will never leave her. Now they can buy themselves a ring with a huge diamond. After a couple of moments, something unexpected happens. This girl takes out a knife that goes straight to the chest of our main character. The next moment was simply terrible. The girl whom our main character trusted thrust a dagger into his chest. The guy did not understand why Ruo Yin decided to kill him. The girl has tears in her eyes. She asks Wuji for forgiveness and says that she also feels bad about this. She tells him that he can be sure that she managed to catch the medicine. Immediately after this, our main character began to fall somewhere in another space. He directed his hand towards his beloved and tried to say something. Continuing to fall somewhere down, he wonders if fate is mocking him, because dying from his beloved after 10 years is a mockery. After all, he died without any choice and no opportunity to change everything. He was not even able to find out the reason why his beloved decided to kill him. Continuing to fall down, we watch the Leviathan from Subnautica about to devour the guy, while the guy understands what it means to be swallowed up by fate. But he was not going to put up with this reality, because he is not going to never give up. He really wants to control his destiny. He intends to control his destiny. We completely fell into some kind of space. After some time, our main character opens his eyes. He is addressed as a master. The guy does not understand who is saying this. Having fully opened his eyes, the guy sees two maids in front of him calling him king. They ask him if he is feeling well and if they are bothering him. After a couple of moments, we are transported upward looking at this state. Right now, an extraordinary adventure has begun that cannot be stopped, because it is about to descend here. The eagle we saw just recently notices that something is happening below, because a stupid X has appeared below, holding his head up and drooling over Mr. Ben. A couple of moments later, this vengeful eagle bomber who outplayed War Thunder, he carried out a true bombing with the help of his shit. A moment later, this precise hit of this eagle lands directly on the chest of our main character, who has been reborn into another body. At this time, he is sleeping. Immediately after this, our main character begins to panic and scream from pain in his chest. He screams that his heart hurts very much. No one understands what kind of nonsense the king is talking about. After this, the guy opens his eyes again, due to the fact that the voices around him continue to disturb him greatly. The guy again sees three silhouettes in front of him, which in blurry vision resemble three waifus. Our main character, seeing this, wonders if he has seen this before. But in fact, these are not waifus, but ordinary children. They are happy that the king has woken up and they will receive sweets. The guy understands that this is very different from his last dream. The little boy who is standing in the middle begins to jump with happiness, because after they inform Sister Yan about the awakening of the king, they will receive sweets. Meanwhile, the guy finally comes to his senses and, examining his body and especially his chest, wonders why he didn't die because his chest was cut with a dagger. A couple of moments after analyzing his chest, the guy stumbles upon a warm mass that was given to him from heaven. He realizes that it is not Nutella. Not even a minute passes before a real waifu rushes into the arms of our main character, who is very glad that he finally woke up and remained alive. Our surprised main character looks at this girl and asks this girl who she is. The girl is surprised and asks if he recognizes his maid. The girl is no less surprised than our main character. She moves away from him a little and begins to shake off her face the new Fortnite battle pass that no one liked. After they clean their faces, they approach each other again. The king asks if he knows her. She replies that she is his maid named Yan. At this touching moment of the maid's reunion with the king, Yan only thinks that he has never been so close to her, and even so tense. However, our main character, who got here after dying, asks if she was mistaken because his name is Mo. At this moment, the guy thinks that he got to the set of some kind of drama, and all the people around are extras. But after a couple of moments, our main character is struck by purple lightning covering his entire body. and he experiences a powerful, painful discharge. Under the stress of this sudden mystical charge, our main character begins to receive a whole bunch of memory fragments in a rapid stream. In the process of obtaining memories, it turns out that the original owner of this body was called Mo Xinghe, and he is the prince of the Northern Kingdom. His future promised to be promising. But as a result of adultery, the Mo family in which this guy was located was expelled from their home, and the place of ruler of the kingdom fell into the hands of other people. The young and promising Mo Xinghe fled with his family, but all these attempts were in vain, because soon his sanity left him and he went crazy. Having received all these fragments of the memories of the past owner, our main character understands that all this happened recently before his soul entered this body. Our protagonist's dark thoughts are interrupted by his maid asking him if he is okay, because they need to return to the palace, and his maid has prepared sweet potatoes for him. Meanwhile, the guy understood that the owner of this body had lost everything and lost his mind, and if not for this maid, then perhaps Mo Xinghe would have been irrevocably dead. Next, our main character, romantically just like in dramas, approaches the girl, calling her name, reports that they are heading home. The girl is surprised that the king remembered the name of the maid. In response to this, the guy replied that despite the fact that he does not remember many things, memories of her remain in his memories. Hearing this, the maid begins to cry loudly and rush into the arms of our main character. She says that this is very great, and she is glad that the master's memory has begun to return. The king calms Yaner down, saying that she shouldn't cry and everything will be fine, but suddenly he notices the remains of poop that were bombarded on him. Immediately after this, the king grabs his maid by the hand and begins to run to his palace, telling her that they need to return quickly, and he will help her wash. Heading to the palace, our main character asks the maid how long he was sick. The maid replies that it lasted a very long time, and she was left alone. He was surprised and asked what the children were doing earlier. He also asked her not to call her king. The maid answered well and added that the children went to the palace for a daily audience. Our main character reminds his maid for the second time to forget about the king and just address him as a young master. Suddenly, the maid got distracted. The maid's gaze was directed at a woman with long purple hair who, seeing these two, began to laugh quietly. Judging by the face of this maid, she was very unhappy that they were destined to meet. In her thoughts, she wondered why she came again. Meanwhile, the young master, after seeing that his maid began to get angry, asked her what was wrong. She replied that it was a matter of toadying around them. The guy asked who she meant, but the maid continued to lead our main character to the palace, saying that they were now taking a shortcut. But the curiosity of our protagonist turned out to be stronger. He turned back to see who his maid was angry about. This girl asked if he still hated her. After our main character and this mysterious woman with long purple hair make eye contact, he lets go of his maid's hand. The maid immediately notices this and looks after her young master with puppy eyes, asking him what he is doing. Meanwhile, the young master approaches this most mysterious woman and simply does not understand how this is possible. What he saw is clearly shocking content. After the guy looks at the face of this mysterious woman, he loudly calls her Ruo Yin because she looks exactly like his lover who killed him. However, this girl does not understand what our main character is talking about and asks what he is talking about. The guy is perplexed and tries to understand why she is here. The next chapter continues again with showing us the surprised face of our main character, who is trying to understand how his killer ended up here. But this girl continues to sincerely not understand what the young master is talking about. She asks him about it directly. She feels awkward. Our main character is blurred in his feelings. He mentally asks his beloved if she knew that he was most worried only about her. Continuing confidently, the guy goes to this woman and wonders why she killed him, because in order to open the liquid, she only had to ask him. But suddenly this touching, or at least touching in the head of our main character scene is interrupted by the loud sound of hunger coming from his maid. The maid of our main character smiles awkwardly and says that it seemed to them and there was no sound, but the young master really did hear it. Approaching his maid, the guy begins to laugh and tells the girl that she is insanely hungry, but the maid awkwardly replies that this is not so and she ate last night. Meanwhile, the discouraged waifu towards whom our main character was moving so strangely directed her hand towards him and tried to tell him something. But the guy simply turned to her and asked the beauty for forgiveness for embarrassing her. Then he told Yaner that they would return home and eat as soon as possible. Looking at this girl, our main character thinks that a blooming flower can be picked, but without the flower itself, only bare branches will remain. However, this girl is no longer the same beauty. Yan Er was the girl who did not leave him when everyone else left him, so she needs to be treasured greatly. This girl with purple hair begins to get angry watching these two go into the distance. The guy asks her if there are hundreds of other maids in the palace. She replies that she is the only one left. Our main character continues to pretend to be a comedian, saying that her stomach is noisy, like a small Roshan from Dota 2. Yan-er asked the gentleman why he was dumbfounded when he saw elder sister Wen. Hearing the name of this sister, the guy stopped and looked at Yan-er and said that he very vaguely remembers her name. In his thoughts, he wonders if they are so close to her. The girl begins to tell that she was the daughter-in-law of the young master, but due to the incident, their marriage was cancelled by her family. The maid continued by saying that her option is for our main character to lose the throne, but she ends the sentence by saying that he shouldn't grieve. But our main character, after listening to this story, only scratches his head questioningly and asks his maid if he loved this woman before. His maid becomes quite embarrassed to give answers to her young master. She replies that he was mainly angry because of the dissolution of his marriage, so she did not really want to remind. Our main character replied that he absolutely doesn't care about this now, because in any case there is no prince now, and he is now free like the waves and the wind. Suddenly the conversation between these two stops due to the fact that the dog noses of these two smell some very fragrant smell, and the two of them are very hungry, so they simply cannot miss it. Immediately after this, the two begin to seem to fly towards the source of the smell. The young master says that he is very hungry. The maid tells him that he has not eaten since the morning. After these two reach the source of this divine smell, real waterfalls form in their mouths because they have a very rich selection of delicious food in front of them. After a couple of moments, we also see what these two saw, and the food in front of them really looks very tasty and very high S-class. For sure, this food is worthy of a king. But after a couple of moments, the window closes in front of their faces. The owner is very dissatisfied with the fact that yet another hungry rogue has appeared who has nothing to do with just staring. In response to this clearly very unfriendly gesture, our protagonist begins to wave his fist and says that they will no longer stare at the stingy bastard's food. Meanwhile, our main character's maid suggests that he rest for now, and she will show him her skills and prepare food for the two of them. The course of events accelerates for a full half hour when the food is already prepared, but after seeing this food, our main character briefly tells his maid that they should talk about this. After the young master realizes that the food in front of them is inedible, he asks his maid what other ingredients are in the house. The maid replies that there is some stock in the house, and also the aunt of the landlady said that today the chicken should lay an egg, and they will get one. After our main character hears the entire available, albeit meager, list of products, he asks his maid not to continue and leave the cooking to him. After a couple of moments, we watch the culinary program performed by our protagonist begin. He takes green onions and begins to expertly chop them. Immediately after he chops the green onions, he takes the poor hen of the owner of this house and decides to speed up the egg hatching process with a slightly aggressive method. Immediately after successfully using his method, our main character breaks the same egg into the frying pan, and at the same time he tries all this for the accuracy of the recipe. After a couple of moments, our main character calls his maid to the table. This time, the dish on the table looks very appetizing. The maid is surprised that his master can cook. The guy, standing in front of his culinary masterpiece, contentedly puts his hands at his sides and answers the maid that for him this is a mere trifle. But the young master understands that this is still not the main problem. The main problem is that without money, he will not be able to do whatever he wants. A couple of moments later, a loud knock is heard on the door of this small, modest hut. The two immediately turn around, wondering who could have come here. Looking at the door, we observe how the one who came here without waiting for the door to be opened for him uses the popular special forces method of knocking down doors. Seeing this, the maid of our main character gets scared and takes pity on their door. At this time, the young master points his fist towards the man and asks if he has gone crazy. But the man who came to them says that he broke down the door as nothing, because this place still looks like a den of rats, so it didn't get any worse. Our main character says in response to this scoundrel that he broke their door and that's enough, so all subsequent words will be unnecessary. Apparently this old man felt like the main villain. He says that he came here to look at the fallen phoenix. He asks him if he still considers himself a prince. Then this old man extends his hand to our main character and asks him to be a good boy and follow him without causing problems. But our main character continues to play the role of the protector of this house. He asks the old man what the hell he is up to, but he is exhausted because his stomach is empty. Then this old man, who is trying to be like Nanami from the magic battle, yells at the two saying that he won't let them retreat from here. But after our main character stands in front of this old man, his testosterone reserves run out. The guy asks him if he wants to measure his strength. Immediately after our main character shows who the boss is, this old man apologized, saying that it was just a joke. He reports that their lady is inviting him to the palace. Having heard this, our main character does not understand what this lady is. It is the old man who says that if he wants to find out, he should just follow him. Our main character asks this old man who he is, because if he is kidnapped, his maid will worry. The old man replies that his lady is a decent person with her own business. Next, our main character says that he will go with him, but he should take into account that their door was made of mountain river boards, and they are not cheap, so he needs to be reimbursed. After the old man who knocked down the door hears the material the door is made of, he realizes that it sounds like a high-class thing. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted and continues when our main character is opposite the very palace of the old man's lady. Looking at the sign of this huge palace, he concludes that since this is the Wan Palace, it belongs to the Wen Manchu family, and entering there does not bode well. Coming closer to the walls of this palace and looking at the guards, our main character understands, using critical thinking, that the guards at the gate are not very friendly. But the young master understands that since he has already arrived, there is no point in thinking about it, so he continues to silently follow this arrogant old man. After these two enter the main hall, our main character asks the little old man if there was a conversation about a personal meeting with the lady, but there is no one here. In response to our protagonist's remark, this budget Nanami asks our protagonist to wait another minute and apologizes for the inconvenience. Our main character at this time sits down somewhere dissatisfied and wonders why in this palace the owner of the palace comes later than the guest himself. Suddenly he points at our main character with a Venus index finger and asks how he could allow himself to sit in the place of the owner of this palace. In response to this remark, our main character awkwardly scratches his head and asks for forgiveness. In his thoughts, he wonders where the second Li Shen came from here. After a couple of seconds, our main character is surrounded by clones of this old man. They say that they understood why the lady loved him. Another clone tells him to continue living in the old house, calling himself worthy. The young master asks this old man if he brought him to the palace in order to mock him. Another clone adds that once the Mo family was considered noble, but now they are poor. Suddenly, somewhere from the side, a voice is heard asking what is happening here. The guy pointing to the source where the voice comes from says that another clone has appeared and now all 7 dwarves are assembled. However, our main character hastened to make a joke because the one who said this was not another clone of the old man, but the lady herself who finally appeared. The first thing our main character immediately looked at was this lady's rice buns. Only after that did he think about something else. Next, the young gentleman unknowingly approached the lady. She asked him if he could get his finger off her rice buns. The guy replied that of course he could. Then the servants of this mistress turned into evil pugs, who were simply furious that this guy allowed himself to touch the charms of their mistress. But this domineering lady only needed one glance to pacify her slightly hyperactive servants, who were ready to bite our main character to pieces. Looking at her servants, she ordered them to stop and told them not to be so rude. They unanimously said that they had behaved unworthily and apologized. The mistress tells her servants that they should not apologize to her, and then she said to do what she tells them. He said that they still have not apologized to the master. Hearing this order, the 5 servants of this lady, instead of executing her direct order, said something, but it could hardly be called a speech, much less an apology. But after these servants were motivated to apologize, they said that they, being unworthy, did not think of it. So they asked Prince Mo for forgiveness. After our main character realized that the lady helped him get an apology from these idiots, he smiled and looked at her. After he looked at her face again, he realized that her face still reminded him of his beloved. Meanwhile, the lady suggested that he talk in another place. With this phrase from the lady, the course of events stops and we continue in the small inner garden that belongs to this lady. Next, we watch as the lady herself, with her exquisite movements, pours Lipton herbal tea to our main character. He thanks her. The lady apologetically asks our main character if he has any plans after everything. The young gentleman replies that there is nothing special in his plans. He needs to find a job. Hearing this, the lady again tries to help our main character. She says that in this case, she has a free place for him in her personal workshop. Immediately after the mistress makes this extremely tempting offer, she makes a kawaii face and asks the young master what he thinks about it, and if he wants to try it. In response to this, albeit a tempting offer, our main character looks away and says that she has no need to worry. He understands that he needs to get out. After the lady hears a rather cold answer from our main character, she tells him that he doesn't look like himself. The guy replies that before is before, but now is now. Next, the guy gets up from his seat and says that the Mo family has fallen, so he should no longer be called Mo Xinghe. From this day on, he is Mo Wuji. He continues his testosterone-filled speech by saying that he himself will achieve everything through his own efforts, and will get everything he wants. In response to our main character's cool speech, the lady begins to braid her hair, saying that she did not intend to give him alms, she just After a couple of moments, without finishing her last line, she takes out some unusual and seemingly expensive artifact from the opening of her rice buns. Handing it to our main character, she says that as long as he keeps it with him, not a single workshop on the market will dare to refuse him. She continued by saying that regarding its use, he himself is free to decide whether to use it or not, because she has no right to interfere in this. Unlike the last proposal, our main character does not refuse, and saying that he understood everything, takes this thing, he even thanks the lady for it. After a couple of moments, this girl begins to blush. She gains strength to say something important to our main character, addressing him by his new name. Immediately after this, approaching him as close as possible and activating her feminine powers, putting her hair back, she communicates that with this she only wanted to tell everyone. But the lady doesn't have time to finish her line, which she was probably preparing because their romantic moment from dramas is interrupted by her servant who bursts into the room. The servant informs the lady that she was visited by a girl who assures that she is looking for Prince Mo. At this time, our main character understands that he said to beat the guy with the surname Mo. So the girl started fussing. Hearing this news, our main character happily jumps up from his seat, saying that it must be Yan Er. The lady at this time begins to nervously drink water, saying that it is too late. A couple of moments later, we watch as our main character's only maid throws herself into his arms. He tells her that he is fine and it's time for them to return home. Immediately after this sudden visit from Yan Er, a couple of moments later they leave the palace. The young master asks if she was very worried about him. The girl replies that this is so because the Wen family was very mean to him. Then she warned him, saying that if he does not eat, it will have a bad effect on him.
Hearing this, the young gentleman with a smile on his face asks what is so big that she is ready to offer him, because he can still mix something and prepare something delicious.
But the instinct of our protagonist's maid tells her that the young master is not saying something. She asks if he could not resist knocking down Mrs. Wen. Hearing this theory, our main character is surprised, saying that he is a lonely man and she is a lonely woman. How could he not resist Wen Manchu, but she was stubborn? After the maid hears in the story of our protagonist that Mrs. Wen tried to rest against him, she asks again. The guy replies that everything is as he said. Next, our enchanted protagonist begins to tell in great detail what happened when he and Mrs. Wen were left completely alone. He told his maid that this lady mercilessly approached him and told him to put his sword in her sheath right now, but he maintained his composure by refusing. Having heard this slightly exaggerated story from our main character, his maid blushed very much, saying that such things are not said in public. Next, the maid said that the young master still wanted this. She meant soul building. The guy asked the girl what soul building was. Yana replied that soul cultivation helps those who have spiritual roots. It allows them to open the spiritual network before they can begin cultivation. After hearing the story from his maid, our main character asked his maid if she meant that it was possible to cultivate here. In response to this, the maid Yan Er replies that this is an obvious thing, because the ancestor of our main character was a famous cultivator, which means he has a predisposition. The guy immediately asks if he can achieve the second elevation of the soul. The maid answers that it is possible, but very expensive. The service of raising a soul is very expensive. Our main character reports that his maid no longer has to work to support him, because with talent he can even become immortal. The young master understands that by then, he may even be able to return to Earth and clarify the situation, because he already has a solution. Meanwhile, we watch two mysterious characters who are watching everything from above. The woman asks the old man what he thinks this time. This old man, who looks like a typical villain, tells the girl to take a look because he was completely right. The girl, in response to this short comment, says that it looks like they didn't come here in vain because there is clearly something interesting here. Then this girl, looking down at someone and licking her lips, says that she really wants to finish her off, but it is unknown who she is talking about. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported back to our main character, who at that moment is mercilessly driven away and called a charlatan. The Catwoman tells our main character to stop inventing a profession for himself. If he doesn't have a qualification certificate, let him go to hell. Our main character, who received a kick in the ass, says that if she doesn't want to accept, then let her not accept, because there is not even a government for such people. After a couple of moments, this woman closes the door in front of our main character and tells him to get lost. The guy wishes this woman to burn out on Bitcoin as quickly as possible. After our defeated protagonist leaves, he realizes that this tigress is also some kind of scientist, but he is a first-class scientist, so he has nothing to fear. A couple of moments later, our main character, who is in the crowd, rips something from his belt and runs away. He has just been robbed like a loser. In addition, some old man robbed him. Extending his hand to the fleeing thief, he tells him to stop, but to no avail. The guy is clearly having a very bad day today. Suddenly, our main character decides to look at the floor, What he sees on the floor surprises him very much, but he tries to understand what it is. After a couple of moments, we see through the eyes of our main character, there is some paper lying on the floor with hieroglyphs on it. Our main character immediately decides to pick up this mysterious piece of paper from the floor and try to understand what it is. He began to familiarize himself. After a couple of moments, the face of our main character becomes much happier. He understands that it seems that luck has visited him after all, and he is very lucky. After a couple of moments, our main character reaches the indicated place in this strange piece of paper. He intends to earn enough money because he promised this to Yan Er. Our main character at this moment finds himself at some kind of scientific exhibition. Indeed, being a scientist, he is lucky. He intends to earn money to feed his maid. After a couple of moments, our main character reaches the very end of this room and greets the one who is standing behind the counter. Behind him is an elderly woman. The woman straightens her eyes and looks at our main character. She says that the guy knows how to control qi, but there is a very important workshop here so he can buy medicine in another store. But our main character does not come for medicine at all. He tells the elderly man that they say that they need medical masters, so he is here to work for them. Hearing this, the elderly woman understands that our main character came through an advertisement. She tries to remember something by repeating the contents of the advertisement. A couple of moments later, this woman loudly screams at our protagonist, asking him if he thinks he is a master of medicine while being a little bean. After a couple of moments, the crowd around begins to be surprised that such a young guy can be a master of medicine. He understands that he previously worked as a biologist and pharmacist, so this is his previous job. The elderly woman decided to give our main character a chance. Calling him respected, she asks him to show her his qualification certificate. But this time our main character is not lost. He winks and says that there is no problem in this. Everyone around him continues to be surprised at how cool this guy is. After a couple of moments, our main character, with a smile on his face, begins to reach inside his robe to get his qualification certificate. Suddenly, the crowd that a second ago admired our main character sees that an important person is walking behind him. Meanwhile, our protagonist is preparing to take out from his robe what he called a qualification certificate in front of the entire crowd. Suddenly, our chief is attracted by the same man who was approaching him from behind. He asks the guy if he is a prince by chance, because it would not hurt him to discuss politics with his minister. Further, this stupid guy said that yesterday he had to continue to work for the good of the country. He asks him why today he decided to become a master of medicine. But instead of denying everything that this man said, our main character said that he was completely right, and indeed just yesterday he was a fool. The crowd is surprised by the guy's honesty. Next, our main character, pointing at this man, says that today he will become a first-class master of medicine. He asks if he disagrees with something. This man is shocked. He doesn't understand how our main character has changed so much in just a day. He tells our main character to stop pretending and show his certificate. Our main character is not going to leave this rudeness. He tells this guy that he should open his eyes wider before offending someone, otherwise there may be consequences. But this man in a green robe, pointing his finger at the table, said that enough empty words. He demanded to put his certificate on the table if, of course, he had one. Our main character smiles and, looking at this idiot, asks if he is serious. His gaze is filled with the confidence of a real Sigma and not a poser. But this man, who looks very unanatomical, points his finger up and asks when he is telling a lie. A few moments later, our main character actually takes out a certificate from his robe and asks the old woman to look at it, which causes the man to spit ketchup half a meter away. This man immediately snatches the certificate. He says that this is impossible and it is definitely a fake. Because he does not even understand the basic steps of drug processing, the certificate must be stolen. Meanwhile, our main character felt his complete dominance. He asked this man if he wanted help in gaining knowledge because he could help. Continuing to dominate, the guy began to list various medical things like the infiltration method, the gelatin modification method, and so on. He asked which of these he wanted to ask about. Hearing all these possibly random, abstruse words, this man in a green robe falls to the ground and a wig falls from his head. He says that this time he took it. Even in this case, our main character continues his dominance. He tells this guy that he doesn't have to thank him. At this time, the young gentleman is asked to go to the owner. Next, the employee of this pharmacy, one might say, tells our main character that she brought a man to him, and she herself is going to a well-deserved pension. A couple of moments later, we see the owner of this place. He introduces himself as Li Jiangjun, the owner of this workshop. He adds that he has heard about his reputation. The man continues saying that he did not expect that the gentleman from the Mo family would actually be a master of medicine who had completed graduate school. His future was promising. The guy tells the man that he shouldn't, Because he just understands something about medicine, he says that a reasonable person would not say bad words. It was this man who threw the certificate before hitting him. The owner of this workshop says that this certificate belongs to our protagonist's grandfather, so he deliberately gave his certificate to young Master Mo. The owner of the workshop continues to say that if he gets his grandfather's secret recipe, he is ready to share the profit. The gentleman replies that he has it, but he wants 80% of the profit. In his thoughts, the guy understands that he just needs to plug in something from the real world. This will allow him to sell up to tens of thousands of bottles per minute. The owner is simply shocked by how much our main character wants money. He says that he will give 80% of the workshop's profit right now. At this time, our main character tells the old man that he is lucky, because his grandfather's incomparable medicine was already ready for sale, so he can empty his pockets. A couple of moments after our main character has successfully earned a lot of money, he leaves the workshop and sings contentedly about the fact that he earned money without much difficulty. Walking happily through the streets of the city, the guy realizes that he needs to find a restaurant in order to buy something and take it with him, cook meat for Yan and eat to his fill. Suddenly, our main character's wonderful walk ends with a blinding light shining into his eyes, and he hears someone arguing about the authenticity of some magical weapon. A couple of moments later, one of the men, somewhere in the distance, uses it to prove the authenticity of his weapon. This bright stream of light blinds the guy even more. Next, we watch as our main character, rubbing his eyes, wonders what the hell just happened. A couple of moments later, we see a man standing on the roof who talks about the thing that is next to him, that it is a treasure that belonged to an immortal master. Even if the people who have gathered around this plump man and don't really understand what an artifact is, they admit that this thing looks cool. After a couple of moments, this charlatan says that he will tell this crowd one secret that will cost them absolutely nothing. He said that as long as they hold this knife in their hands, they can. To become immortal, he takes out this blade. The crowd is shocked because this gentleman always promises 5 pieces of silver in order to touch the dagger, extending life by 5 years. The crowd is already crazy about this crazy opportunity. They all start taking out their money in order to extend their lives. They all want to touch this dagger at least once. At this moment, this charlatan is literally delving into proposals. Everyone is swearing and crowding. They really want to be the first. The charlatan reports that he is not a master or a grandfather, but this guy's friend has a very strange feeling. Turning back, he realizes that something is clearly wrong here, and it doesn't give him peace. Pointing his finger at our main character, he asks him to immediately answer why he, like everyone else, does not stand in line to pay him. Our main character asks this idiot if he is talking to him. The charlatan answers that he is talking to him because he was blinded by a golden light, so he is obliged to drive money more sharply. A moment later, this charlatan points to our main character up close and says that he is bound by fate with this knife. He asked if he would like to touch and check at a discount. The guy replies that he doesn't have much. Then he asks the charlatan if he is threatening him with a knife. He says that he is not, and he is bargaining, so he lets him look at the artifact. Next, the charlatan, holding out the handle to him, tells him to try to touch. The young gentleman at that moment understands that this merchant is not only a fraudster, but also a psychopath. After a couple of moments, our main character decides that he is a Sigma, so he throws this strange dagger aside, telling the merchant to get lost and try to scam someone else. After our main character sent this dagger into the air, it stuck into the ground. The merchant turned around and looked at the knife. He could not believe his eyes at that moment. This very nasty merchant started shouting that his artifact was stuck in the ground. He tells the guy that he ran into trouble, because if the magic knife is stuck in the ground, he will lose his magical power. This trader understands that things are bad. Because the precious artifact touched the ground, the lady will definitely discover the loss, so it's time for him to leave. Next, this charlatan runs up to the main character, telling him if he gives him 100,000, then nothing will happen to him. He will apologize to the immortal for him. Our main character tells this loser that the words of a loser have no weight for an immortal, so he blatantly continues to lie. This charlatan says that if there is a lie in his words, let the heavenly disaster punish him right now. The young master tells him to try to split it, because everything he says is nonsense. But after a couple of moments, something unexpected celestial disaster happens in the form of lightning and really punishes this charlatan, and he screams in unbearable pain. At that moment, he realized that the lightning was very close, and he too finished playing with his words. You can read horror and misunderstanding on his face. While the entire crowd that was around these two is running away, our main character is also trying to run wherever his eyes run, but his noses do not listen to him and he cannot budge. A couple of moments later, we see the same one of those two dubious persons descend. The grandfather asks his ally why they are even doing this. A girl with huge eyes reports that this insignificant janitor dared to steal her artifact weapon and engage in fraud, so he himself decided to die. This lady was simply horrified that this vile scum touched her weapon with his dirty little hands. It was simply disgusting. While these two quickly dealt with the problem, our main character stood and trembled watching them leave. The grandfather told the girl that her lightning technique had become better. Suddenly, our main character asks them if they are just going to leave. He tells them to stop, saying that if their lightning would move a little more, there wouldn't be a wet spot left. Immediately after our guy addressed them, the lady turns around and realizes that our main character has a little testosterone because he dared to yell at her. The girl decides to encourage the masculinity of our main character. She throws him her weapon, an artifact, and says that she is giving her weapon to him. But our main character is dissatisfied even with this outcome. He shouts at her not to try to pay him off, because she should at least apologize to him. At this moment, our main character was tormented by anxiety. His bottom shrank, he almost became the main character, and now he almost wet himself. Next, the girl pointed her hand filled with magic at our main character and told him that she knew no mercy. Most likely she was going to erase him. Suddenly, our main character, who is standing fearing for his life, is grabbed by the hand by his maid who runs up to him from behind. Delighted to find her master, the girl invites him to return home. The guy is also glad that he saw Yaner. He agreed to go home. At this moment, these two evil villains were very surprised by Yaner's sudden appearance, because for some reason she was very familiar to them. Meanwhile, these two, despite the fact that two villains were standing behind them, began to leave. Our main character told the maid that he had earned a whole lot of money today. These two villains realized that this was the same girl who they discovered the highest quality spiritual roots on that very night. They almost forgot about it. Meanwhile, the two continued to leave. The young master said that he had received a treasure whose touch could make her even more beautiful. She smiled and said that the gentleman knew how to joke. Suddenly, a woman standing behind who was about to destroy our main character called out to these two, telling them to stop. Turning to them, the young gentleman took out a dagger and said that he forgives them, because this knife is good and it will be enough as an apology. Further, this old man said that they had an opportunity, because they feel that they can have spiritual roots, that is, unlike people, they can be cultivators. These two simply cannot believe what they heard. Being in this world, Mo Wuji has already decided to be content with what he has, but he still has the desire to cultivate, thirsting for strength to protect Yaner, and not even wanting to ever return to Earth after achieving immortality. He wanted to ask Ruo Yin, but why? Then our main character asks these two if they are serious, straightening his beard. The old man says that there is no need for them to deceive them, because they are really very lucky. Next, this old man points to the side and asks if they see a small place next to a tall building. They invite them to go to the city, to the abode of the immortals. There they will discover their spiritual roots. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we continue after some time. The guy's maid asks him to return, but he tells her not to be afraid because he is with her. Meanwhile, the two asked their servants to prepare everything for the soul test. The subordinates first greeted their bosses. After a couple of moments, the young gentleman asks if opening the soul will cost them a pretty penny, because they are brother and sister and make ends meet. The girl replied that no one here demanded money from them. After some time, this small group finally reaches the required territory. The dark lady informs the two that they have arrived. Looking up, our main character was very surprised, because these bad guys turned out to have a place where spiritual roots are measured. Our main character was happy, but his maid was a little scared. It was for this reason that our main character went first. A girl in open clothes told him to just put his hand on the crystal. The guy was very worried, even with such a simple task. After a couple of moments, our main character plucks up courage, as if before an injection in childhood, and still reaches out his hand. His path to becoming immortal has just begun. During the procedure, our main character was very excited because he had just begun his path to improvement, and he knows that this path will be very thorny, but he will cope. Suddenly, the exciting moment is interrupted by a woman asking him how long he's going to stand because the crystal did not react, so let him go down. The guy asked what about the blue glow. The girl finally destroyed the hopes of our main character by saying that this was his usual state. Now it was the little one's turn. The guy was broken also when someone doesn't get a waifu in gacha games. After a couple of moments, our protagonist's maid touched with both hands the crystal that was supposed to determine the size of her spiritual roots. This time the crystal reacted, and it reacted very powerfully, because in the blink of an eye it turned purple. The lady was sure that it would react. Looking at the active reaction of the crystal that determines the level of spiritual stones, the lady was surprised because she really has the roots of a tree of the highest quality. Jifei Lan will make her a good student. The old man, who also observed the impulses of this crystal, was also surprised because for the first time in his not short life, he encountered such strong fluctuations. After they were finally convinced of the correctness of the crystal, Mrs. Fei invited the girl to accept her as her student, being a cultivator from the City of the Sword. The girl was simply shocked that she was actually capable of cultivating. She was preparing to give an answer. Meanwhile, the young master behind her was in a terrible state. But before giving an answer, this maid first of all looked at her young master, who seemed to have just had his Genshin Impact account deleted. The girl then approached the cultivator and said that she was only willing to follow her if her young master could also go with her. Waifu replied that this would not work, because there was no point in taking this boy with her who had mortal roots, because he would no longer be able to cultivate. But the girl continued to firmly stand her ground. She said that if the young master did not go with her, then she would not go anywhere and would stay with him. This arrogant lady called Yan stupid, because this mortal is like an ant because he has no spiritual roots, she said to just forget about him. Next, this cultivator decided to turn to our main character. She said that she had good data, and her stay in this place would only hold back her rich potential. She continued telling the young master that she was going to take her with her for cultivation. He should know how important this is. Meanwhile, the soul of our main character has just returned to him. He understood that Yan had spiritual roots of the highest quality, so she should not have any problems with cultivation. Her cultivation ability exceeded a mortal by 100 times. This girl continued to wait for the mortal's answer. Our main character understood that this fairy did not look like a good person. Yan spiritual roots were incomparable. A better place would have suited her. After a couple of moments, our main character bowed and asked for forgiveness. He said that his little sister didn't really want to, so he asked for forgiveness for disturbing the two immortals. Then these two simply turned around and left this strange place. Yan told him that she was hungry, and he replied that he had invited her to feast during the day. But this girl who looked like true evil clearly did not intend to let these two go. She asked herself if she was really hungry. After a couple of moments, this lady called upon her magic and asked the two leaving whether they really believed that she would allow them to just leave. Next, with the help of her cultivating powers, this lady raised the maid of our main character. She asked her young master to save him. The maid who flew away from our main character asked to let her go, because she wants to stay with her young master, but the lady said that she would soon forget about him. After a couple of moments, our main character, who had 200 IQ, pointed somewhere into the distance and said that right now there was an invasion of alien cultivators and UFOs. These two really believed our main character. They even thought about it after they looked at where these alien cultivators were. Maybe their imagination was running wild. At this time, our main character understood that he simply had to save his only maid. While these two were distracted, he managed to get to her. But after a couple of moments, our main character's attempt turned into failure because after a couple of seconds, he received a powerful blow to the face. Next, the cultivator began to beat our main character, asking this loser if he really tried to cheat her in such a childish way. After a couple of moments, this lady's patience finally ran out. She called on her lightning and said that today she would kill another pathetic ant, incapable of anything. A couple of moments later, we watch as this magical projectile approaches to destroy the young master. He is already ready for death, so in his thoughts he asks Yan to take care of himself. But after a couple of moments, an unexpected turn occurs. Yan stands up under the shot, thereby covering our main character. She says that if they want to kill him, they first need to kill her. But the Dark Lady is calm. She is surprised that the girl is using her body to protect the loser, but her sword chi energy will overtake him because she can kill the two of them. After a couple of moments, our main character receives a powerful blow that causes our main character's bones to easily break, causing him terrible pain. Immediately after our main character's maid sees this, tears roll into her eyes because she failed to protect her young master. Next, this woman says that if she wants to save this guy, then she must follow her, because he has a few seconds left before he turns into mincemeat. At this moment, our main character feels simply terrible pain, which becomes more and more every second. He says that these cultivators are real bastards. Looking through the bloody veil before his eyes at his maid, he tells her that she should not go with them. He continues to shout that she should not go with them. But the girl faces a very difficult choice. She cannot kill her young master, so she says that she really wanted to stay with him. She says goodbye to our main character with tears in her eyes. She shouts to him that she would like to stay with him and make tea and spend time together as before, but she is forced to run away. She tells him to take care of himself. Even experiencing many fractures at the same time, our main character continues to shout to his maid not to go with them and to immediately turn around. After a couple of moments, everything around becomes very gloomy. The eyes of our main character begin to water. because now he is not capable of absolutely anything. A very serious battle begins inside the head of our main character. One begins to feel sorry for himself because he could not protect his only maid. But the other side of our protagonist intends to fight. He is confident that Mo Wuji will undoubtedly save his only maid without any doubt. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we continue at the moment when Mr. Mo told the owner of the workshop about everything that happened. The owner replies that no one could have known that everything would happen like this. He tells him that he shouldn't worry too much about it because nothing was in his power. Next, our main character reports that he is going to collect all the necessary herbs as quickly as possible in order to increase his strength and save Yan Er. However, the owner, addressing our main character, says that he should not blame him for excessive chatter, but an ordinary mortal cannot have abilities. He continues saying that trying to defeat immortals is basically impossible. It's better to earn an honest living. After listening to everything, Mo thanked the old man for his concern. Mr. Mo continued saying that everything was fine and he had an idea about it. He also asked his grandfather to help him prepare the herbs listed on this list. A couple of moments later, our main character handed the old man several cards with various herbs indicated on them. Judging by his reaction, they were familiar to the old man. Dragon grass, bunch of wormwood, Militia reticulum. After reading many more plants, the owner asked if the young master had compiled a recipe for a new medicine. The young master smiled and said that this is exactly the case, and he will start at any time immediately after he receives these herbs. Besides, the medicine will instantly gain popularity like Roblox. Hearing this, the old man began to clap, because if Mr. Mo is so confident in himself, it means that he shouldn't hide it and start acting. After a couple of moments, this old man began to do some strange actions. With the help of these body movements, he set ordinary, unremarkable walls in motion. Next, a very hidden cache of herbs opened in front of us, which belonged to this workshop. Everything around here glittered and was located in just perfect order. Seeing this huge assortment of herbs, our main character told his grandfather that he was very cool. The owner replied that there was everything here, and even more than what was stored in his shop. Next, the owner of the workshop asked our main character if he was satisfied. The young gentleman replied that he was not just satisfied, but this was really just an amazing sight. At this moment, our main character realized that he did not need to worry about the potion that he had discovered during his lifetime, the potion that opens the meridians. Immediately after the old man provided our main character with a huge cache, he asked the young master to share his knowledge about the new medicine he was talking about. The young master answered the old man that of course he would make a potion called 9 Lives Healing Liquid. The old man was at a loss at such an incomprehensible name. The old man, hearing this name, began to wave his hands, saying that this name was very defiant, and with this no one would scold them for black propaganda. Our protagonist continued by saying that this 9 Lives Healing Liquid will not only help heal injuries or clear up infections, it will also eliminate inflammation in the body. Our main character continued his speech with incredible pathos, saying that compared to previous pain-relieving ointments, this is simply a unique product that is sure to cause a sensation. It is for this reason that immediately after this medicine is published, the two of them will immediately become rich in a completely childish way. After hearing this, the owner of the workshop began to see a waterfall from his mouth, because judging by the description, this medicine is simply divine, because with its advent, the business will begin to flourish more than ever. Our main character, using all his charisma, pointed his finger at the old man and told him that if he believed him, he would definitely help him rise greatly. The old man continued that the gentleman probably does not know that now His Majesty is seeking to expand the borders of his country, which is why most of the masters were summoned to his palace. Our main character immediately understood why the old man said this, because then the advertisement for this medicine would be on him. He asked to keep the list of ingredients secret. Then the old man said that he just needed to give him the product and he would do the rest. Then the two gave each other 5 as an oath. Together they set out to get rich. The course of events is interrupted, and we continue the story 3 whole days later. On the streets of this city it is quite foggy, and there are quite a few people on the streets. Landing down, we watch as a little girl advertises product number 1, a completely new medicine, a liquid that miraculously cures all diseases. But the crowd is not immediately ready to take this medicine, because 10 gold coins for a potion is a ripoff, because no one says that the medicine is ready to cure hundreds of diseases. This is just nonsense. Next, we watch the same nasty man in green who, having fallen, understands that if everything continues at this pace, he will die of fatigue. Next, they announce to the crowd that they should not rush to buy the product, because this young gentleman wants to take a short break. But the crowd did not care and they continued their attack on the counter. At this scene with ruthless customers, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported to the events of the same night. inside which the owner of the workshop descends into the main hall. Looking down, the old man sees that absolutely the entire staff is in deep sleep. Because today was a monstrously difficult day of sales, he calls this site a bunch of slackers. Next, the grandfather comes up to Mr. Zhao and tells him that he has worked hard, but he needs to get up in order to continue carrying the medicine. Suddenly, this man awakens as if from death and tells old man Lu that all 1,000 boxes of 9 lives healing liquid are completely sold out. Hearing this news, Grandfather Lu is so happy that with a sharp raise of his hands, he sends Mr. Lu flying. He simply cannot believe that his shop continues to grow wildly. While Mr. Zhao lands on his head, the owner of the workshop, Lu, remembers that he needs to tell this good news to the young Mr. Mo, who is his business partner. But at this moment, our main character occupies a very crucial moment. He is busy mixing 2 components and only one step remains before success. But suddenly, this very single step towards success is interrupted by the owner of this workshop bursting into young Mr. Mo's room and shouting and laughing very loudly. Our main character looks out of his room angrily and asks if he saw the Do Not Disturb sign. The grandfather replies that apparently he was too excited and did not notice her. Next, the owner of the workshop reports that all portions of their new product have been sold out. The main character is not surprised and tells them to continue counting the money, and he will continue to study the medicine. A terribly satisfied old man Lu leaves our main character's room. He says that Mr. Mo deserves to be considered a prince because he is a Sigma and so on. Meanwhile, our main character will continue to try to recreate the very potion that he made in the last minutes of his past life. This time, he will definitely succeed. After a couple of moments and a couple of procedures, our main character finally manages to recreate the very purpose of opening the meridians again. We see in front of us the familiar liquid from the beginning of the manhwa. Our main character once again raises the potion that he managed to create and says that he again achieved success by making the liquid to open the meridians for the second time. Everyone says that cultivation requires the presence of spiritual roots, and without open meridians, this simply cannot be achieved and nothing will come of it. In the past life of our main character, he did not have enough time to drink this potion because his beloved stabbed him in the chest. But this time, being in another world, he hopes that nothing will interfere with him in order to safely drink the miraculous potion he invented. Immediately after this, our main character begins to greedily empty the contents of this container. He must open the meridians and then surpass all mortals and save Yan Er. But after our main character empties the contents of the container, he is at a loss because for some reason he doesn't feel anything after that. But the effect of this potion was not long in coming, because after a couple of moments everything begins to sparkle green, and our main character feels his right hand begins to burn. Our main character begins to feel this, even if it hurts, but he also feels the energy that is inside him, hitting his meridians throughout his body. The liquid for opening the meridians, as expected, even in the past life, really achieved unprecedented success. Suddenly, our main character feels like the energy inside him is stuck and does not move further. He thinks about increasing the dose, but then his body will simply burst. Next, Mr. Mo begins to get angry and hits the table with all his strength, because he just realized an even worse thought. He realizes that this meridian opening fluid does not pass through the arteries. He wondered what if Ruo Yin killed him because she felt it. Suddenly, there is a loud knock on the door of our main character. He shouts in the direction of the knock so that he won't be disturbed because he is in a very damn bad mood. Next, the owner of the workshop, Lu, comes into our main character's room with a very sad expression on his face, and behind him there are a bunch of huge armed soldiers standing behind him. After a couple of moments, one of the soldiers standing behind breaks forward, pushing this frail old man away. The soldier tells him to get out of here. After this soldier sees our main character, he smiles like an anime psycho and tells him so that means he is his goal. Then he begins to laugh quietly. Further, this incredibly strong-looking soldier, pointing upward, reports that he was told from above that he was producing prohibited medicines here in his workshop. The super soldier asks our protagonist not to try to resist, but instead to show intelligence and just follow him silently. Our main character really showed intelligence and followed the soldier. He informed these two that they were all going with him to the headquarters. At this time, the guy analyzes the situation. While the soldier tells our main character that they shouldn't be afraid because their general just wants to reward them for their business, the guy thinks that he probably missed something very important. When this soldier says that their water of 9 lives actually has an incredible miraculous effect, the guy finally understands what he missed. The guy realizes that in the ancient era, there was a very high mortality rate among soldiers, and their new product is in many ways superior to any product of this era, so it will become a national treasure. Next, our main character tells the soldier that the general is probably very busy and will not be able to receive them. He asks them if they want to lure them to the barracks in order to reduce the price. Our main character understands that this is really the case. He offers to give them a 50% discount, which will be only for them. The soldier is surprised by Mr. Mo's determination. Immediately after, our main character, using the method of critical thinking available with at least 200 IQ, solves the problem. This group of soldiers, satisfied with the proposal, runs away. The old man tells the guy that they are already selling this wonderful potion too cheap. Our main character replies that money is money. In any case, we will have to publish the recipe. Hearing this, the old man is simply perplexed. Because they already earn very well now, he does not understand why they should publish the recipe when they earn about 30,000 gold a day. Our main character answers the old man that they still have a whole life ahead of them, and they will certainly be able to find a way to earn even more money. Mr. Mo continues saying that they are in a dangerous situation because this medicine is simply a miracle for the army. It will attract the attention of people from above. When the time comes, they will have to keep it a secret. It is for these reasons that our main character told old Lu that they should break off their relationship before the law breaks it off, because they can easily be imprisoned for illegal drugs. On this confident note, the course of events ends and we are transported a full 5 days later to the palace of Emperor Chenyu. A servant informs him that rumors have spread among the people about the god of medicine. The emperor, having heard about this rumor, judging by his facial expression, is interested in hearing about a certain god of medicine. The servant reports to his majesty that the medicine master named Mo Wuji has already arrived. As he can see, he is the youngest medicine master in their country. Next, our main character immediately greeted his highness and wished him to be as dexterous as a tiger and as fierce as a dragon. The servant called our protagonist a fool, saying that he did not yet have the right to stand in front of the emperor. He told him to kneel, but the emperor tells the servant to leave, because the master of improving medicine of their country has earned enough honor, and he should not kneel. He immediately asked what reward he wants to receive. One of those present said that this is simply unacceptable, because Mo Wuji is from the north of the Qin country. He was once the successor to the imperial family of Mo Xinghe. Perhaps in his soul he harbored a grudge against their country, and could sell medicine to other countries. He asked the emperor to listen to him. Having listened to some random person, the emperor declares that in this case, this guy should be killed because he may really harbor a grudge against the empire. Having heard the order of the emperor, the servants immediately began to drag our main character somewhere. He simply could not believe his ears that they decided to kill him so abruptly. The guy tried to save his life by saying that despite the fact that his medicine was not an elixir, she had already saved many people, and killing him because of his words alone was nonsense. The emperor said that they would end it there, because they couldn't let the secret recipe fall into the wrong hands. Entering the palace, he had to be mute for the sake of medicine for them. Despite the insults, our main character said that this medicine was developed by his family's grandfather. He left him the recipe as an inheritance in order to make it public. Our main character said that after he made a little money, he published the recipe. Immediately after the emperor heard about the serious crime, he ordered the guy to be immediately bewitched to death. The guy continued to shout that they could not kill him because he followed the teachings of his ancestor for the benefit of the people. Because he was a benefactor for his people, he understood that publishing the recipe was a double-edged knife. Suddenly, a man intervenes in the trial. He tells His Highness that our main character cannot be killed now under any circumstances. The old man continues saying that now every person knows that the benefactor for his people was none other than Mo Wuji. If anyone finds out that he killed their hero, it will have a bad effect on his reputation. The man continues to speak in the language of facts, saying that he has already published the recipe. However, if news of His Highness's generosity appears, the subjects will revere him even more. The emperor sees the meaning in these words and listens. He again asks the guy what reward he wants because he heard that he is focused on restoring the country. But he can forget about it because he rules the country. The young master understands that this emperor is such a hypocrite that he simply intends to get his share. The guy understands that as soon as he promises to refuse to restore the country, everything can turn around. Meanwhile, the emperor is waiting for the answer of our protagonist. Next, young Mr. Mo thanks the emperor and declares that he is no longer interested in restoring the country. Now he is thinking about something else. The guy says that he wants to focus on becoming a master alchemist. He understands that he will have to look for opportunities to escape from the country, but he does not have a patron. Next, this man who stood up for our main character declares to the emperor that he just lacks a pharmacist. He asks permission for him to come to the Frosty Palace. The emperor, without thinking for a long time, says, "Let young Master Mo go to the Frosty Palace." After this decision, the emperor says that everything is settled so we can leave. After a couple of moments, the course of events moves to the street. Our main character thanks Jingong for literally saving him from the death penalty. In response to this, the old man laughs and says that the young master is too polite. If he had not thought about saving himself, he would not have been able to stop his highness. Next, this kind old man, smiling, says that the young master should return home and thereby do him a favor. Our main character smiles back at this old man and asks whether old man Jingong really needs the younger man because he himself said so. The old man replies that it is so. He has a beloved daughter who wants to take part in the meeting to enter the monastery of the immortals, but she lacks a pharmacist. Next, this kind grandfather says that he hopes that the young master will follow his daughter in order to protect her if necessary. Our main character tells the old man that he is already in his debt, so even if it costs him his life, he promises to take her straight to the meeting in the abode of the immortals. In his thoughts, our main character understands that this old man is very worried about his mischievous daughter, and besides, he does not know where this monastery is. Maybe he can find out where his maid is. After a couple of moments, the course of events ends and we continue. When our main character returns home, the staff from the workshop is happy that the guy survived. He replies that fortunately, he was prepared. Young Master Mo asks old Lu why he is still crying. He replies that now he has nothing to sell at the pharmacy. The gentleman replies that they still have the recipe for the original Han pill. The main character replies that he will be able to wrap it in beautiful packaging, and their quality and price will be 2 times higher than everything they earned, after which the old man's mood rises. Immediately after our main character calms down old Lu, he says goodbye to the workshop staff who are already dear to him. They tell him not to forget to come back here for profit. Meanwhile, our main character is filled with confidence, because right now he is heading to the Frosty Palace. He is confident that on his journey he will find Yan Er. On this note, the course of events breaks off and continues, when our main character, having reached the Frosty Palace, orders the guards to open it. He realizes that this old man seems to be quite rich. However, the guards are not going to just open up to our main character. One of them replies that he can only enter after he takes 30 steps to the left. A couple of moments later, our main character is in some very dubious place. He understands that such a medical master as he should be in the presidential suite. He doesn't understand how he can live in some abandoned shack. He also understands that his maid Yan Er should be fine, because now she doesn't seem to be in any danger. Suddenly, the peace of our main character is interrupted by a knock on the door. Our main character tells the knocker that he can go inside. Next, a guard of the Frosty Palace bursts into our protagonist's room and says that he is his fan. He says that he was seriously wounded but was saved with the help of his medicine. Next, this strange guy asks our main character to take care of him. The guy understands that this blonde guy is very friendly. This blonde man approaches the young master and warns him that since this is his first time here, he warns him that he can do anything except provoke the mistress and her best friend. Our main character is surprised after he hears about the lady of the Frosty Palace. The guard says that after sleep she is happy and tough. Her scream shakes the sky. She is a man and a god rolled into one. Suddenly, the lady she was talking about comes onto the stage. She asks Dan Bu the second what he's talking about behind her back again. The guy replies that he didn't say anything bad. For some reason, this angry girl, seeing our main character, tells him that she specially prepared this broken house for him to live in. That's all she can offer him. This lady comes out of the shadows and tells our main character that she doesn't need him in this palace, and her martial arts are enough to protect herself. She asks if he wants to go where he shouldn't. This tsundere waifu continues to say that she will do everything to not allow our main character to stay in this palace, and if he doesn't like something, let him leave. But in the head of our main character, it only flashed that this girl looks good. He also concluded that she does not like women's clothes and prefers a military uniform. Our main character also liked the daring expression on this girl's face. It was immediately clear that she was a powerful woman and also dressed in armor. Even this girl has already noticed that our main character has been admiring the beauty of this girl for quite a long time. She directly asks him if he has seen enough of her. Looking at her, the young master wonders whether this girl really needs protection. She even thinks that the old man really cheated him by sending him here. Next, the girl performs the most dangerous kick against a male opponent. She tells the guy that if he looks at her again, she will crush his boyfriend. The girl immediately took a dominant position and said that she knew that our main character had recently become famous, but bragging would not work with her. In response to this, our main character replied that he only sat down and did not touch anyone. He did not even begin to brag about his reputation or his account in PUBG Mobile. Approaching closer to our main character, she ordered him to shut up and asked if he still dares to call himself the god of medicine and fool people. The guy replies that he is not the god of medicine. Hearing this, the girl says that it turns out she doesn't need him. He tells Mrs. Han that she may be strong and independent, but he immediately noticed how he might not agree. But the young master continued by saying that heroes also get injured, and beauties have these days, and he is the chief master of creating medicinal pills, who knows how he can help the lady. Hearing our main character's speech, Mrs. Han puts her finger in her mouth and says that our main character's words seem to have some meaning. The blonde guard decided to intervene in the conversation, saying that the guy was telling the truth and his medicine could save his life when he was on the verge of death. The guy continues saying that love can pass through the darkness of rivers and thousands of mountains, so they could not change the room for him. He, as a master, can live in the presidential suite. After this girl hears that the guy hears about the luxury bucket of dumplings, the girl calls him a strange person, but nevertheless she could think of something for him. Immediately after a couple of moments, this girl says that in this case, she is going to agree to the exchange. Suddenly, some lady comes on stage. She says that this broken house corresponds to the status of our main character. Miss Wen appears in front of us and continues to say that this house really suits a person who does not value being treated kindly. Our main character is very surprised by the sudden appearance of Miss Wen. He immediately asks her what she is doing here in the Frosty Palace. The girl, holding her fist and looking at the guy, says that he shouldn't have given their family's token because he started selling medicine and then became a doctor. She gave him the opportunity, and he dared. Suddenly, the girl's speech is interrupted by the fact that the previously domineering girl in military armor is happy to see little sister Manchu. She tells her that she came here with a purpose. But again, she doesn't have time to finish her sentence as this girl who was previously impudent rushes into Manchu's arms. She asks her to stop because Mo Wuji is watching. At this time, the blonde guard of this palace and our main character are using the same emotion. Lady Han continues to tell his sister that they will sleep together. Turning to our main character, the girl on the left asks Miss Wen if she knows our main character. She replies that it is a great honor for him to know her. He used to constantly hang around her. Our main character thanks Miss Wen for her sincere help, but he was not yet going to use her gift because he was going to achieve everything using his own strength. Pointing her finger at our main character, the girl says that this is exactly what is called ingratitude, because she has never been refused by Wen Manchu. After this girl says all this to our main character, she tells him to think carefully about her words, and after he thinks about them, let him find her again. Walking away, Mrs. Wen tells Ning Ning that our main character should live in this abandoned house. The girl reports that she would never disobey her sister. Our main character, meanwhile, loses himself again. The blonde asks our main character why Mrs. Wen was so angry. He asks him what kind of relationship they have with each other. After a couple of moments, our main character comes to his senses and realizes that the powerful commander Mrs. Han has fallen in love with him, but nevertheless he is very tired. The blonde continues his annoying story about how there was pus on his leg, and amputation was necessary, but his pill saved him. Our main character replies that this is understandable. Suddenly, our main character's story is interrupted by the fact that he hears very loud bells. He understands that they will soon have to leave. The blonde informs our main character that they need to hurry to the ceremony. He continues by saying that this bell is needed for Mr. Zhengong's emergency situations. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted and continues when these two run up and come to the owner of the castle and ask what happened to them. Approaching closer to the owner of this castle, we see how very bad he is and the servants are trying to help him. The servant reports that he should calm down immediately. After a couple of moments, our main character approaches the gentleman and tells him that he should not worry so much. Instead, he asks him to immediately tell him what happened to him. Holding his cane, the gentleman begins to tell the young gentleman that his Kik-er was brutally and very badly deceived. Our main character and the blonde guard of this castle are very surprised. They do not understand what the gentleman means and how such an important person can be deceived. The old man begins to tell that while this old man was not here, the Minister of Finance Yao Kang arrived and began to incite Ning Er. He said that in order to participate in the entrance to the abode of the immortals, it is necessary to prepare a treasure. The old man continues saying that she was required to get the two-leaf firegrass, and she is a stupid girl, so she headed to the Thunder Mist Forest. The blonde is afraid after he hears about the Forest of Thunder Fog. Our main character, as a resident of the modern world, does not understand what it is and asks. They answer him that this is a very scary place. Thunder Fog Loess is a forest on the outskirts of the Chengyu country. The situation there is simply terrible, since there are many demonic beasts and poison living there. What's even scarier is that there are many streams and lakes that are covered in thunderous distortions and can turn anyone into burnt toast. Our main character realized that this place was called the Thunder Fog Forest, but he was also interested in something else. He asked, "What about Miss Wen?" The emperor replied that she could not convince Ning Er, so she went to protect her. Turning to Bu II, the old man said that he would also have to work hard by taking another person with him there. Boo II is charged with testosterone. He begins to beat his chest, saying that he is very generous towards him, and he will immediately go there. He intends to do everything in his power. Our main character turns to this guy, asking him if he would mind creating a team, because he as a healer will keep him company on this quest, which means that he will leave this poor house. Meanwhile, the owner of this palace is still feeling bad. He tells Boo II and the young master that they simply must do everything in their power to return his daughter. Immediately after this, the two agree, despite the fact that he himself is still green. However, he will be ashamed to show himself if this woman gets hurt. This is the problem of all men. After a couple of moments, we watch as a new chapter begins with the demonstration of a not very healthy horse that seems ready to throw back its hooves at any moment. Looking at his horse, our main character understands that his horse is somehow emotionally unstable. The blonde man says that his horse was so scared that it wet itself. It turns out that all the horses on which this crowd arrived to save the master's daughter refused to move further. Our main character concluded that they could only continue on foot. After they all dismounted and headed deeper into this terrifying place, they could not help but admit that this place was simply terribly creepy because there were only remains everywhere. But despite this group of seekers was obliged to continue their movement. They needed to quickly find the lost one and get out of here. The guy asked the blonde to speak in a whisper. After a couple of moments, young Mr. Mo sees an unexpected sight in front of him that frightens him very much, even more than deleting a Brawl Stars account. This whole group stops because they see in front of them a 15-meter huge monster with scars who is holding a huge cleaver in his hands. After these people see this huge monster, our main hero tells Boo II to leave first because his legs are numb. The blonde replies that he can't feel his legs at all. After a couple of moments, this huge monster with huge fangs opens its mouth wide and makes a frightening sound. Surely it is going to satisfy its needs for proteins. But suddenly another huge monster bursts into this huge monster, and with its attack deprives the first of sight with its clear hit in the face of this thug. This crowd can simply believe their eyes, because right now in front of their eyes, one frighteningly huge monster was killed by another frighteningly huge monster. What the hell was going on here? Immediately after this, as the group began to feel their legs, they began to use the famous Joestar family escape technique, everyone running at random. Continuing to carefully walk through this terrible forest, Boo II raised his sword and was ready and hoped that in this terrible place, the lady would be eaten no earlier than them. Suddenly, huge snakes begin to attack these two right from the trees. They were not ready for the attack, so one of the snakes manages to teach one of the members of this squad a lesson. But after a couple of moments, we watch how our young Master Mo easily deals with the snake with his already familiar artifact dagger. Our main character manages to kill this snake before it attacks Boo II. The young master tells him not to be distracted. Boo thanks the guy for saving him. Next, our main character warns Boo II to be careful and not touch their blood, because this thing is called a 5-step snake. After a couple of moments, we watch as a whole horde of these snakes moves towards these two. The blonde begins to panic, saying that these snakes always live in packs, there was only one way out. Then these two again use the Joestar technique to escape from a dangerous place. Our main character finally sighs, because as soon as they entered the forest, there was not a minute of peace. Another was that while escaping from the snake, our main character accidentally became separated from his travel companion, Boo II. After a couple of moments, the attention of our main character was attracted by some kind of flash. He immediately looked puzzled towards the nearest actions. Looking to the side, our main character saw the same lost girl who at that moment was in a battle with a monster. The guy understood that he should hurry and then find the second Boo and get out. Meanwhile, this confident badass girl continued her battle with the lizard on steroids, the girl telling this foolish lizard that she could not keep up with its speed. Next, the girl gained height after the blow, and then dealt a critical blow to this stupid lizard. She asked her how she liked this technique of the spear of the king of Hanjia. After killing this ferocious lizard on steroids, the girl began to praise herself, calling herself a girl who was simply overwhelmed with strength, but she only used 30% of her strength. Meanwhile, we watch our main character and Miss Wen behind him. Our main character tells the lost one not to be such a fool and save herself immediately. Looking at our main character, this girl told him that he should definitely talk less because she had already told him that she didn't need him. But a couple of moments later, this albeit tough girl gets seriously injured immediately after she lets down her guard, while in this terribly treacherous place. The sudden blow from the inhabitant of this terrible thunder forest is so strong that it sends the girl flying. Our main character tells her not to be afraid because he will certainly catch her. After a couple of moments, our protagonist actually catches this girl, but he catches her not with his hands but with his face, in a clearly questionable way. The rather weak body of our protagonist cannot withstand the weight of this girl, which is why the two of them fall into a dangerous pond. Miss Wen only at that moment reaches them. After these two accidentally end up underwater, our main character realizes that this girl grabbed him too tightly when he caught her. Then this girl, diving to the bottom with our main character, wondered if our main character could save her by swimming out of here. She wondered if he wanted to drag her to the grave. After a couple of moments and after very difficult attempts by our main character to swim out with this girl, he still manages to do this, and the guy emerges and is surprised that she is as heavy as a lead block. After our main character places her on the grass, Miss Wen immediately begins to ask if she is okay. The guy replies that she just swallowed water. After a couple of moments, Miss Wen extends her hand to our main character and tells him that she will definitely pull him out. She turns to him, Xinghe, but he says that his name is Mo Wuji. But after a couple of moments, our main character is struck by a powerful electric shock. The effect of the electric shock is enhanced by the presence of water with electrolytes. Our main character understands that this was imprudent, because Bu II said that there are rivers of thunder everywhere. Our main character began to drown because his body was already paralyzed due to the discharge. Our main character understood that this was the end. Besides, he was being carried away by the current away from his allies. He did not think that if he were reborn in another world, he would die having achieved nothing. He again was not going to put up with it. Before his second death, the silhouette of Yan floated into the head of our protagonist, for whose sake he tried to do everything to become stronger and bring her back. Being on the verge of his second death, our main character was surprised because, looking at his hand, he saw that the blocked meridian had just opened. Immediately after the guy regains control, he swims out. He feels a pleasant pain. This feeling when the meridian was closed after taking the liquid passed after the lightning strike. Our main character understood that if all his meridians were completely cleared, then this would mean the same thing as having spiritual roots by becoming a cultivator. Holding the magic dagger in his hands, the guy understood that fortunately this magic dagger absorbed part of the lightning strike. Otherwise, he would have simply been fried. He intended to pay everything back when he returned Yan. Our main character continued to feel pain, but this time it is a painful sensation. Now the charges only harm him, and the meridians are motionless. Our main character at that moment was thinking about what to do. Perhaps a magic knife could weaken the power of the current. He must pierce his meridians before falling down dead. Suddenly, the guy notices in his pocket the very liquid that he recently invented again. He realized that right now he has the liquid for opening the meridians with him. Immediately after the guy discovered this liquid, he immediately took it out and holding it in front of him, he understood that right now he had to make a fateful decision. But our main character did not doubt it. He immediately drank this potion in one gulp, because this is the liquid of opening the meridian. This is the work of both of his lives, so he cannot take advantage of the chance given to him. Next, the warrior girl asked one of those standing on the shore why he didn't help her, because of this, her man fell into the water. She was told that he died because of her, and coming here was a real mistake. This guy who was standing AFK replied that he just wanted to warn her. Besides, she should be more polite to him, because he should enlist the friendly support of the Liang family before he agrees to take her with him. Meanwhile, this girl hid behind her sister and told the guy that he was just bullying her. Meanwhile, Bu II finally found the two of them. He wondered where brother Mo was. Miss Wen immediately turned to Bu II, saying that his voice was very loud, so she asked him to shout as loud as possible so that Mo would come back here. This blonde awakened the powers of the Dovahkiin in himself. He awakened the power of his voice and very loudly shouted the name of our main character, asking him where he was. This blonde's voice was so loud that he forced absolutely everyone around him to close their ears as soon as possible so as not to lose his talent to hear. Next, this AFK man with purple hair told Bu II to immediately stop his unbearable screams. He drew his sword, threatening him with violence. A couple of moments later, while this idiot continued to threaten the blonde, Bu II tried to warn this aggressive guy that there was something behind him. But this idiot thought that the friendly Bu II decided to trick him, which is why he turned around too late and saw a huge monster behind him. A couple of moments after this last frame, there was a simply huge explosion comparable to the explosions of a modern warhead. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we move to a time shortly before this explosion. We watch as our main character filled with power and opened his meridians. Our main character easily jumps out of this lake, saying that this gorgeous lake can no longer cope with him because he doesn't care about its lightning anymore. Our main character cannot get enough of the fact that he has finally broken through one meridian. Now he is experiencing feelings that he could not even dream of before. At that moment, lightning appeared in our main character's eyes. At that moment, he felt just like a real Superman or Mr. Invulnerable from the cartoon of the same name. Our main character became so stronger that he could jump without difficulty. He understood that the world was so big that he had to do everything possible. Meanwhile, our main character, who had finally received power, was approaching a huge monster, because even if he destroyed it, he could easily cope with it. A couple of moments later, our main character, just like Naruto, galloped up to the monster through the trees. He understood that being unnoticed was just wonderful. He looked at the huge dragon. Suddenly looking down, the eagle eye of our main character noticed a 2-leaf firegrass somewhere below, which is simply unimaginably difficult to obtain. Calling the huge, powerful dragon a dog, which he told to sleep, the guy calmly took this herb and felt very at ease. The local monster is quite strong. A couple of moments later, our main character heard something from the side. Looking to the side, he realized that it was the voice of Boo II who was calling him to them. Because of this terribly loud scream of Boo II, the huge dragon next to which our main character was located began to slowly wake up. The guy immediately became nervous. Immediately after our main character realized that the monster was waking up, he jumped high into the air. He wondered whether he should beat up or thank Boo II for that cry. Meanwhile, being in the sky just like Superman, our main character realized where the noise was coming from. He wondered if some kind of battle had begun again at this detachment. Looking down from a bird's eye view, our main character saw his squad struggling with the huge earth. He also saw that someone was lying on the ground. He understood that this was bad. Having looked closely with the help of his eagle vision, our main character realized that things were very bad because Manchu was wounded and was lying on the ground unconscious. Then we saw in front of us a huge monster on the ground, with which the squad was fighting. In this terrible place there are a lot of monsters. The psyche of our main character will clearly suffer today. Approaching this terrible monster, our main character understood that despite the fact that he looks terrible, he must act because people's lives are at stake. But after our main character approached this terrible snake monster even closer, he realized that plans had completely changed, and he now had to run away. Meanwhile, the AFK guy was in a panic. Because the effect of his protective talisman quickly ended, he hoped that he would be able to kill this snake by killing it. After a couple of moments, this guy with purple hair finally decided to attack right at the apparently weak point of this huge monster. But looking at his sword after the blow, this guy saw only a drop of blood. He was horrified. Was his S-rank dragon sword really such a show-off because the gentleman paid serious money for it? Next, this monstrous creature began to attack this weak little man. Just like the alien from the film of the same name, this monster had a tongue that had another mouth. The defeat of this guy was clearly a matter of time, because his victory was not even considered because his opponent was too strong. The monster was going to finish off the stupid human ants. But this guy continued to fight this huge snake. He said that he is Chao Hao, and he is the strongest enemy of Orochimaru from the Naruto anime, so fighting snakes is not new to him. Next, our main character intervenes in the battle with his new powers. He tells Chao Hao to better watch his rear, because danger is heading towards him. This guy quite rightly answered that he needed help, because he would no longer be able to restrain this huge snake using the power of Orochimaru. Meanwhile, we are watching a militant girl who, in the background of a battle with a huge snake, lies on the ground and cannot do anything because her body is soft and she cannot get up. Meanwhile, Miss Shen opened her eyes and was very annoyed in her thoughts, because this strongest enemy Orochimaru was already tired of making noise, because this Chao Hao was yelling for 10. Meanwhile, this strongest enemy, Orochimaru, whose trick was to transform into a snake, his sword broke. Chao Hao immediately realized that with the breakage of his sword, he immediately came to an end. Immediately after the sword of this guy who was fighting broke, he decided that the hour of his death had come, because this monster was no longer holding anything back and it was ready to continue killing. The girl who was lying on the ground understood that she couldn't just die because she hadn't even gotten married yet. What happened next surprised her very much. Before her eyes, she saw our main character who, having surrounded himself with energy, was moving straight into the mouth of this monster in order to make peace with him with his strength. After this huge snake monster felt a lightning strike from our main character, a lot of blood came out of its mouth, which means it received serious damage. Our main character, landing on the ground, asked this viper if she wanted to give another lightning strike. Because this is a magic sword, a damn garden hose, he does not understand what to do after the lightning is released. This huge snake really received a lot of damage from the attack of our main character, who stood below and waited for this loud snake to attack him again, because he is an engineer and holds out until the end. This huge snake had intelligence, so it decided that it didn't want to take any more damage from our main character, so they agreed that it would turn around and he would put away his sword. This is exactly how this battle came to an end. Immediately after that, the same tsundere rushed into the arms of our main character and thanked him for saving. This tsundere girl hugged our main character, saying that he almost scared her to death, and Miss Shen, our main character, asked the girl not to crush her. After Miss Shen was able to get to her feet, she pointed her finger at Ning Ning and asked what she was doing. She asked if her relatives would be ashamed if they found out about this. The girl turned to her sister and said that she had nothing to be afraid of, because after this incident, Brother Wuji became her older brother who saved her life. Further, this girl, hugging our main character, emphasized that our main character became her older brother, and not her, please note. Surprisingly, this really bothered this girl. She was surprised and said in a whisper that the young master was her brother, but she said this in her thoughts. Suddenly, a loud cry was heard again from Boo II, who shouted, "Beware!" Our main character did not understand what was wrong with Boo II and what he meant. A couple of moments later, these three were attacked by that same vile snake. But Boo II, deciding that he would become the goat of this manhwa, decided to rush in to save these two. A moment after the last frame, there was a huge explosion, which we have already seen. It was still comparable in power to the explosion of a modern warhead. Raising his head, our main character told Boo II that he managed to save them. He must be the goalkeeper because this vile snake showed his vindictiveness. But after the two approached Boo II, who managed to save the two with his heroic move, our protagonist told him that everything would be okay. However, the same fool who screamed the loudest while he was struggling said that nothing of the sort happened, just one servant died, and that doesn't mean anything. Our main character was not going to tolerate such an attitude towards a person. He demanded Cao Hao to shut up. He asked her if he knew who he was in order to be insolent. The girl asked Mo to stop. Suddenly, this girl noticed something that really caught this girl's attention. She just couldn't believe her eyes. After all, looking at the clothes of our main character, she saw two-leaf firegrass for which she came to this terribly dangerous place. It was very unexpected. The young master told the girl that he had recently picked a couple for her. He wanted to give it to her a little later. But now the main thing is Boo II. The girl said that she would call the doctors. She did not expect that she would get it so easily. Meanwhile, Boo II, with a smile on his face, told our main character that he shouldn't worry about him, because his wound was just a trifle. Our main character was indebted to this hero. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported a whole 7 days ahead. Someone begs the doctor for something. The doctor reports that he will do his best. This someone was our main character. He asks this bearded doctor to stop, but he does not pay attention to him and continues to leave. Turning to our main character, the doctor repeats that he will try his best. He says that despite the fact that this liquid is good, it is snake venom. Our main character at this moment is in confusion. He cannot believe it. That basilisk was strong, so he also spat out his saliva. Isn't this fatal? Because there is always a way out. The doctor replied that in the misty forest, monsters and medicinal plants exist together, complementing each other. They could get the two-leaf firegrass and cure the guy, but it's difficult. After a couple of moments, the course of events moves to the courtyard of the Frosty Palace, in which a lot of people are gathered in front of Mrs. Han and Mr. Owner. Next, this girl, raising her hand, sparkling with happiness, says that tomorrow she will go to a meeting in the abode of the immortals, so she asks not to disgrace the honor of the Han Palace. Next, our main character, who is in a hurry, approaches this girl. The girl tells him that they will leave in the morning immediately after the speech. But the guy asks her if she still has the fiery three-leaf grass. The guy begins to glow with joy. He tells the girl that the doctor said that Boo II can be cured with the help of this rare herb. Hearing this girl is very surprised. She asks the guy if he wants to cure Boo II using this rare and very hard-to-find herb. The guy answers everything correctly, saying that they have as many as 3, and only one will be enough for a cure, but Gentleman Han thinks twice before spending one on a servant. Hearing this, our main character is very indignant, telling her that Boo II saved her life, but she continued to say that he is a servant and she cannot help. The guy stated that now he has the same status as a servant. He asks what she will do then if he announces that he is Mo Wuji, his elder brother. But the girl finds excuses by telling our main character that he saved her, and besides, he once had the status of a prince, which, in my opinion, radically changes the situation. The owner of this palace said that Boo II had wounds in his left shoulder and arm. The doctor allowed him to amputate his arm, after which they would provide good financial assistance. In his opinion, this is a good option. Having heard these terrible options, our main character becomes very gloomy. In his thoughts, he understands what kind of nobles are here. Maybe in public, Boo is second and just a servant, but he is also a man. A satisfied girl asked our main character if he understood, in her opinion, she could reward this Boo II with even more than ordinary grass. Our main character became much more serious. He said that if they still hold him for Brother Mo, or if they still believe that he saved them, then they should just give him a piece of grass. If these nobles are not going to save Boo II, he is going to do it personally with his own hands by taking a piece of grass. The girl, in response to the words of our main character, begins a real internal struggle because in her eyes, Boo the Second is just a servant, but if our main character says so. After a couple of moments, Mrs. Han decides to give our main character one leaf of this rare and very hard-to-find herb. Returning to the crowd, this tsundere asked everyone what they were all staring at. She told them to return immediately and prepare to leave tomorrow. At this moment, even if our protagonist did not utter a single word, he was immensely grateful to Mrs. Han, who went against her principles. A couple of moments later, our main character finally fulfilled his words by healing the servant who saved them. Boo the Second at that moment felt simply excellent, because he had completely recovered. Our main character, feeling a little awkward, asked Boo the Second if he was exaggerating, because just yesterday he was a dying dog who was ready to die at any moment. Next, Boo the Second told his that he could no longer hesitate. He asked our main character if he had heard about the immortal Du Hu. He reminded the blonde that he suffered for others. Then these two, like real buddies, left the room. Our main character invited the guy to eat to his fill, and after that he would go for Han Ning's motorcade. The guy was ready to eat a cow. At this point, the course of events moves, and we are transported to a very beautiful nature where the weather is simply beautiful, and a picturesque view opens up to us. Apparently, these two are playing catch-up, but when Boo the Second uses only the physical strength of his legs, our main character flutters like a butterfly. Our main character, literally flying, tells Boo the Second that he needs to be faster. He needs to catch up as quickly as possible. One Boo the Second says that he is fast and light like a swallow. A couple of moments later, these two reach the caravan. These two unanimously inform Miss Wen and Madame Han that, fortunately, they made it in time. Then these two waifus, being on horseback, turn back to look at our main character, but they again do not answer the second Boo, but he is a Sigma. Looking up, young Master Mo and Boo the Second see in the sky a huge number of different strange animals, and the cultivators themselves, all of them rushing to the meeting in the abode of the immortals. Mrs. Han, looking at our main character, addressing him as Wuji, tells him that he made it. The guy replies that all these guys are so cool, they are flying straight to the meeting. Next, some very cool horse of SSS rank appears in front of us, which is dressed in very cool armor, and the horse itself apparently goes to the hall. On horseback is the same guy who yells the loudest during the battle. He says that the meeting of immortals is somewhere thousands of li away from this place, and it is extremely dangerous there, so everyone uses flying means. However, this place is also a good place to show all the power of high society. He asks our main character if he, the servants, understands this. After a couple of moments, this annoying guy gets off his Pegasus, saying that he looks like he's a little tired, so he'll give him a rest. Next, he sits down with little sister Ning Er, inviting her to ride together on horseback. This Madame Han feels awkward because of this guy's movements. Next, this girl acts like a real Sigma mommy. She tells this cow that she can lend him a horse. She says that he can use it while they get to the port. Our main character says that this cow Hao feels much better than in the Thunder Fog Forest. He is called his dude. Because who is he without the power of his family? The guy is not at all ashamed that he is an empty place. He says that, as our main character said, his family has considerable power. He also owns a hotel near the port. But our main character, in response to this, just wags his finger and says that isn't he that crazy person who brags about his weapons for a lot of money, in which only there are no pathetic people like him in the world. These words greatly infuriate this guy who thinks that he is worth something. He asks our insolent main character what he just said. While this idiot continues to yell at our main character, calling him an insignificant servant, the guy, remaining calm, asks him why he was so nervous. Meanwhile, two beautiful waifus watch from this battle of intellects of these two. Miss Wen notices that Chao really only relies on the power of his money. Seeing that Sister Wen was laughing, the guy was completely shocked that the servant was able to cheer her up. It's not surprising that she ignored him all day. The girl with long hair replies that the previous position of our main character was much higher than him. I won't say for sure, but she can still restore it in the future. At this time, Mrs. Han, who acts as a limiter for our main character, tells him not to go too far in this conversation. But Chao's face said that he had already accepted everything. He chuckles that Wen said that he could restore his position because this would only speed up his approaching death in front of so many people. Then this terribly evil guy told Sister Han that he doesn't want their relationship to crack because of someone's servant. He tells her to make our main character apologize. Our main character continues to be a giga child. He says that the show-off of this young Mr. Cow is right out of all the cracks because he ran ahead of everyone halfway out of the forest of thunderous fog. Suddenly, Mrs. Han actually addresses our main character, which greatly surprises him. She asks our main character to apologize to Brother Cow. The guy is at a loss. Our main character looks questioningly at Mrs. Han, but she continues looking somewhere to the side, asking our main character to apologize to the master. Despite the fact that our main character really didn't want to apologize to this loser, he still decided to make a concession and not quarrel with Mrs. Han. Next, our main character told this gentleman that he is just a servant who does not know the rules, as Mrs. Han said, because Mr. Han is noble and should not apologize for his frivolity. Having heard our main character's albeit peculiar apology, this guy with purple hair said that so be it, but what he said was something other than a joke. Next, our main character asked Mrs. Han if she remembered how he promised her father to accompany her to a meeting in the abode of the immortals. Now she needs to stay here and wait for the ship, so there is no need for it. In response to this, the girl does not have time to say anything. After our main character begins to turn around and leave, the girl calls out to the young gentleman, telling him to come back. The guy replies that Mo Wuji declares that from now on, he is no longer a servant of the Han family. They should go through this great path, but he has to go through the bridge. Despite the fact that Mrs. Han did not want to say goodbye at all, our chief said goodbye to the two waifus, saying that if they were lucky, they would see each other again. Immediately after this, our main character walked off into the sunset. Boo II runs out behind our main character and says that he will go with him, because he decided to give up the prospect of being a servant. At this time, the idiot thinks that Mo Wuji is the old Mo Xinghe. Before, when he remained an idiot, he could still save his dog's life. But if he wants to show off, then this young gentleman will lend him a helping hand by doing him a favor. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we continue with Boo II and young Mr. Mo being in the port looking at the ships. Boo asks how dangerous the path to the monastery is. The young gentleman replies that by flying you can get rid of a lot of problems, but now they don't have tickets, so they can only sleep on the street. Boo replies that he doesn't regret anything. Next, the second Boo, scratching his head and pointing to the side, tells our main character that cats have a cat's way and rats have a rat's way. Next, Boo II tells Bromo to look there. There are a lot of tents scattered around the port. He offers the guy to rent one. He offers to go down and taste the seafood. After a couple of moments, Boo II begins to mercilessly devour seafood. He admits that he is Ding Boo II in all his 20 years of life for the first time to eat so much meat. But our main character reminds his sidekick that he has eaten at the Han Palace many times, so he shouldn't be so hassled. Suddenly, our main character is distracted by what is happening behind him. Someone announces that the meat game is starting, and this dad has been waiting for this all day. Our main character sees a very strange picture in front of him. He does not understand what is happening. Despite the fact that Fat Man Shi was late, the goods were excellent today. A fat man in a hamster costume tells the people around that they must have been waiting for a long time, but today he solemnly offers this delicious product worth 1,000 gold. The fat man continues by saying that this girl's body is not only familiar with martial arts, it is also very flexible, and in addition she is the scion of some royal family, so the person who receives her can have fun. Pointing to this girl, the little hamster continues saying that it just so happens that today is the 8th anniversary of their trading house. There are special offers for new and old clients. Immediately after the merchant announces the starting price of 1,000 gold, everyone immediately begins to fight for this top-end waifu because everyone wants to have it for themselves. After our main character realizes what is happening in this place, he says that it is as disgusting as possible. Because they are trafficking people in broad daylight, this is a real crime. But Boo II has a different opinion at this time. He cannot take his eyes off this waifu because she is simply very appetizing. He is completely hypnotized. Our main character suggests that his friend first wipe the blood from his nose. Boo. The second says that the weather is hot today. Western medicine can help him get rid of blood loss on a hot day. After a couple of moments, our main character realizes that he does not want to put up with human trafficking in broad daylight, which is why he intervenes. The whole crowd is surprised at the audacity of our main character.
The leader of the trade asks with an incredibly angry expression on his face, who just dared to interfere with his trade. He orders the guards to get rid of this garbage.
A few moments later, our protagonist is attacked by two crazy guards with very strange tendencies. One of them wants to rip out every one of his bones, and the other wants to beat him 100 times. But our main character is not the only one who is going to interfere. Another guy comes onto the stage and performs his Tarzan palm strike. This blow is so powerful that it easily forces the teeth of this crazy guard to immediately leave their sockets. This guy's fists seem to be filled with steel. The poor girl who watches as two heroes try to free her tells them to be careful. Next, this fat hamster took out his crossbow and tells this karateka that he will die because of his curiosity. At this time, the guy realizes that he did not take this turn of events into account. Next, This crazy hamster realizes that victory is in his hands, so he uses his Chinese repeating crossbow to deal with this loser. But after this guy fires a shot, he realizes that he just made holes in his hand. He doesn't understand when our main character managed to do this. The guy apologizes for not warning. This guy, who also stood up for the waifu they were trying to sell, says that he should apologize to this benefactor. The young master replies that such a noble hero like him is too polite. Next, these two come together in a strong male handshake, simultaneously saying that when you notice injustice, shout louder. When the time comes to provide help, extend your hand. This is how a noble hero should be. Immediately after, these two realize that they had found the perfect complement for each other. They remember about the captive and free her. They tell her that she can return home. The girl thanks these two benefactors, these two telling this beautiful waifu to seriously be careful and not get caught by the bad guys. Taking a closer look at our main character, this recently rescued waifu realizes that the same young Prince Mo is standing in front of her. He makes sure and understands that it is really him. Immediately after this girl realizes that this is our main character, she rushes into his arms. Our main character doesn't understand what's going on at all. She didn't expect that she would be able to meet a member of the Mo family. The guy asks her to stop being like that, because she should be ashamed because they are not related. He asks her not to hug him so tightly. Next, this girl tells our main character that if he doesn't remember, she is his side branch relative named Mo Xia Tong. She says that he may be the only remaining member of the Mo family,